Our next speaker, Narissa Niesler, has pioneered an unorthodox yet inclusive life for herself as a proud woman living a life unhindered by disability. Narissa has experienced rural and remote living firsthand. She took control of her independence in 2004 by moving to the Sunshine Coast, completing a bachelor's degree of IT. At that stage of her life, Narissa had very minimal government funding and successfully crafted her own divergent model of self-directed support to sustain her future. After university, Narissa worked in IT management, founded 2 businesses, and is a company secretary and director for a not-for-profit organization. Narissa works alongside individuals, their families, paid supports, service providers, not-for-profits, and government organizations who all strive for a respectfully valued life for people living with disabilities. She's also in Karen Brook's inner circle of excellence and has been a client since 2019 and taken all of Karen's programs since then. Well, please welcome Narissa Niesler. Welcome, my dear.
Hello, Narissa. Thank you so much for joining us today. We can't wait to hear and you share a little bit more about your story and also the life expectancy you were given. You and I had a little chat about this the other day, and I just said you have to share that with everyone on today's call. So tell us a little bit more about your story and the life expectancy that you were given and what happened with that.
Yeah, so I was born with spinal muscular atrophy. And when that diagnosis came about at 18 months old, it was a little bit of the story of Narissa will only live to around the age of 15 to 25. So take her home and love her. And I was really privileged to have parents that didn't accept that and always pushed me to kind of just get out there and live every day as it was, just to enjoy life and have goals and be successful. So, yeah, I was very much going out there, getting it, not conforming to that belief system of that I was a person with a disability. It was more about just living my own life in my own terms and just doing every day with passion and purpose, really. Yeah.
And then what happened when you got to 25 and you're still here? What was that like for you? What came next after that?
Yeah, so that was, I suppose, a pretty big time for me because I'd achieved all this huge success and some really satisfying goals. I'd done things that a lot of people with disabilities hadn't had the opportunity to, or hadn't broken down those stigmas and barriers. So when I got to that 25, 30, it was kind of, well, what now? I still feel happy and healthy within myself. And I think the big thing for me around 30 was that I was, in a place where my body was starting to deteriorate. But as we all know, with what Bob says, my mind was still active and healthy. And for me, it was kind of finding that balance where I could take control of my mind and strengthen it and do an audit on myself, really, about how I could use my mind to control my body more, even though physically it wasn't functioning the way that I wanted to. And Karen and I actually met at uni. We did. And so we did a degree in IT and I did a minor in design as well. And that's how I met Karen. But I was watching some reels on Facebook and stories about being over learning with Bob. And I was like, yeah, this stuff really resonates with me and I can use this to strengthen my mind to get out of this place where I can't use my hands in my trade anymore. Not being able to use a mouse to do graphic design was a really big barrier to get over. And so that's how we kind of meshed that. I meshed that knowledge from Bob to then use my mind to to do what I need to do in my life,
Mm,
find other ways of doing things. And even though that was something I've always done, I think when you're in that really tricky place, you need some more tools and tool belt
mm.
to keep going forward.
And you said it was around about that time, 30-ish, when you came and got into the coaching programs with me. And you said something to me the other day that it also, not only did it strengthen your mind and open up, you were setting new goals, C-type goals again, and learning about the process of mind and matter and different elements. But you said something very interesting. You said it helped you lead your team. It helped you create a new belief system in them. Talk to us just briefly a little bit more about the benefit, the flow on effect that it had in your team, your support team, and even in your family, about challenging them on their own judgments around what you could do and who you could be.
Yeah. So at the time I had a support team where um they were amazing at what they did, but everyone was kind of stuck in that same place where I was, where we weren't setting those bigger goals of achievement anymore. So it was about sharing and strengthening and leading people in my life.
Mm,
Um, that if everyone else can do it, I can too. And
yeah.
life isn't just about a life expectancy. That's something that someone has, their opinion has been placed on you, and I have a different opinion of my life expectancy.
Yeah.
I will be here for another 30 years or so. So
We hope you, of course you will be. And we want you back on these calls, please.
yeah. So it's a
So,
lot of that free will, that motivation to keep going. And yeah, I think with the family too, is getting people to flip their outlook on me as that it's not just about disability, it's about those goals that I'm setting and achieving.
mm. So
Yeah.
what keeps you motivated to keep moving forward and growing?
Um, I think the motivation is that love for life, but also to show everybody and people with disabilities and their families that they can have a life free of disability as well.
Mm, mm,
Um, that it can be about having a job, um, having equitable employment, living a
yeah,
life, being married, having children,
yeah.
rather than it just being about a person and their disability.
Mm. You're such a great example of that. I remember recently you shared a story of a young man who drove himself from Brisbane to the Gold Coast or something, and he never dreamt that he'd be able to do that, but you had shown him that he could set a goal and go out and achieve something that we probably take for granted, but it gave him a new life being able to do
Yeah,
that. You set that example all the time.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah. And you're also doing a lot of advocacy work. So, uh, just briefly, I think it's important to mention, just the advocating in hospitals, to look at the whole person, treat the whole person, not just their body, not just their disability. Get
exactly.
people out of, how important has that been, or how big a shift has that been for you um, over the last 4 or 5 years, as you've really looked at energy and mindset in how you're leading yourself and those around you.
Yeah, I think that's been a huge shift. I mean, 5 or 6 years ago, I wouldn't have thought that I would still have that energy and motivation to get up every morning. Um, and if to put things into perspective for everybody, for me to get up and in my chair and ready for the day, that's a 3 hour exercise that involves two people to do that. It's not
Yeah.
half an hour to get up and get dressed. And that can be a lot for some people, but that's such a fun part of my day. And that's because of the mindset work that I do with my team.
Yeah.
So that when I am in my chair ready to work, I can do things like my advocacy and leadership work with other people with disabilities so that they're not hindered by their disability. And that's
Mm.
Mac in the background walking
Oh,
around.
I love it. This is a great story too. We'll have to have you back and talk more about this. But this was another client of mine,
Thank
bred
you.
these dogs, and Bonita Bench bred these Chocky Labradors, and then you got one and you've trained
Yeah.
him. But also, you had to, your team or family were like, you can't have a dog. And then you've got, hey, Mac,
Exactly.
look at him. Isn't that
Oh,
so
it's
good?
so
And she
cute.
did. She went and got a dog
I
and trained him.
know. And yeah, so Benita, it was just this dream that I've had actually since I was probably about 7 to have an assistance dog. And then I saw Benita put up this post holding Mac, and I was like, yep, this is the
That's
dog.
it.
This is it. And Mac has changed my life so much to a point where I, last year I was hospitalized. I was really quite unwell, and I was getting to the point where at night I couldn't talk. I didn't have that physical ability to talk with the breathing machine on, and I was getting anxious about sleeping. And
Mm.
so Mac has made that possible for me to kind of sleep soundly again, where he will notify my husband Steve if I'm like moving or need some assistance, or he'll just do little things like move my hand so I can access the remote to the bed to reposition.
Mm.
So he's
Amazing.
so amazing.
So good. I love it. Now you are available. You're open and doing more keynote presentations. People can bring you into their
Yeah.
teams and you'll talk to them.
Yeah.
So we're going to share, if it's okay with you, we want to share your email address, if that's
Yeah.
okay, in the chat. If you want to reach out to Narissa and have her come and speak to your team, hop on a webinar, present to your company, she is available for that. And I highly recommend that you do, because as you can see, your story is just, it's amazing, but you've also done the work, you've done the
Yeah.
work on yourself to get to where you are. And I think, that's a great example of what's possible when you do this mindset work.
And keep doing the work.
And
That's
keep doing the work.
yeah.
I know you haven't left. It's so good. You keep doing it. So it's exactly what we want, because as we said at the start of the call, all transformation requires new ideas. We cannot transform unless we think from new ideas. And so you put
Yeah.
yourself in an environment, you made a committed decision to be in an environment around people who have these new ideas so that you can continue to transform. And the flow on effect is so far beyond your own mind and body. It's out into your team and just the hundreds of people, thousands that
Yeah.
you're influencing and impacting every day through your work. So I want to thank you so much for joining us
Thank
today, Narissa.
you.
Please come back again and spend some more time with us. It was so lovely to have you on and to share your story with everybody today. So thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Thanks, Narissa.